Well, good evening, everyone. We started a little late just because the bridge was turned, so we were trying to give some extra folks some time to come in. But I want to thank everybody for coming this evening to the Future Programs in Beaufort USCB Education Foundation 20/20 Public Forum. So thank you all for joining us. I'd also like to thank our professors over here to my left, as well as our elected officials. So thank you all for joining us. Well, my name is Justin Rice, and I'm the chair of the USCB Education Foundation. And you're probably wondering, well, what's the Education Foundation been doing to help USCB in its endeavors? Well, I'm going to give you really the Cliff Notes version of it on some of the more exciting items we're doing. Out there on Hilton Head, hopefully most of you have been to that campus. It's absolutely gorgeous out there. And we're working with the town of Hilton Head to try and expedite some student housing on that property, which we think will really give that quality of life to that facility for the students and provide us a better utilization rate. So as we head down 278 to Bluffton, we're also working as part of a team on a convocation and arena, as well as athletic fields on the Bluffton campus for both baseball, softball, and track and field. And now we're heading up here to Beaufort. So this is why we're here right now. We want your input for the future programs and projects on the beautiful Beaufort campus. So there are surveys out on the front table. I will show you what they look like. If you don't have a pen tonight, or if you didn't grab one as you came in, please grab one as you leave and complete it at home. There's an email address on there. Scan it in and just send it in. That's how we're going to get the information that we need to help us design our platform for the campus, or for the next steps of the campus. We're also going to have a quick question and answer session towards the end of the forum. So as our speakers are speaking, be thinking of a question so that when it's time to say, hey, are there any questions, we don't hear crickets. So, and before I turn the podium over to our next speaker, I'd like to make sure everyone in attendance is aware, and hopefully our marketing team has done a great job at this, that this year USCB is celebrating its 20th year as a 4-year granting institution. So that's a huge accomplishment. So and now I'm going to turn it over so that you can hear the actual substance of the forum to a good friend of mine who just happens to be the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs, Dr. Eric Skipper. So Dr. Skipper.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you to the USCB Education Foundation for thinking this kind of activity is important enough to hear what our academicians and others have to say about the university, about where we are now, and to set the table for what we'll talk about. I know there are many people in the room who care deeply about the university, care deeply about the environment, and I see this as a perfect forum for us to all discuss that. 3 weeks ago, the U.S. News and World Report released their 2024 college rankings, and Chancellor Panu and I, by the way, he slipped in. We saw you. You can't hide from us. He just got back from Columbia, and in the morning, I'm leaving at 7 a.m. to go to Columbia, so we spent a lot of time on the road back and forth. But the Chancellor and I and others were pleased to see that USC Beaufort was ranked in the top 10 among public regional colleges in the South. That's the highest we've ever been ranked. It's a 6-point improvement over last year. So, and that measures things like student retention, return on investment after graduation. It measures our success with Pell-eligible students. And at the same time, the university is engaged in all these other activities that don't figure into the metrics for the U.S. News and World Report rankings. Things like engaging in regional problem solving, improving quality of life in the Low Country, and in taking that role seriously, the university has quadrupled research expenditures. That is, we have quadrupled the amount of grants coming into the university. We perform research at levels that exceed that of many R2 institutions when you look at a per-student basis. So we have this entire other cosmos of activity that's happening that's not even paired with what happens in terms of the rankings. So our faculty engage in this improving of quality of life, and they engage in this in the problem solving in our region as we laid out in our academic master plan. We said we're going to measure the university's success based on outcomes in the community, and this is environmental, educational, economic outcomes, health outcomes, all these things. And but our faculty, what they've done such a great job is driving all those activities right back through our students. And in doing that, they involve them in undergraduate research, in community-based learning, and our students, as a result, are absolutely thriving. They're succeeding in the workforce. They are achieving nationally competitive accolades and regional accolades like Washington Semester's Program, Fulbright, Department of Energy internship, NIH internships, McNair, and so on and so forth, at absolutely unprecedented levels. A lot of this stuff did not used to even be in the lexicon of USC Beaufort. Also, they're getting accepted into graduate programs, and many of them prestigious. Vanderbilt, Duke, Emory, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and so forth. But I will say, improving quality of life in our region and helping our students succeed is not something that the university does alone. It requires tons of community partners for all of our academic programs. This goes for the programs on this campus, the history program, the art program, the honors program. In particular, I'll talk a moment about our nursing program, for instance, which, by the way, was ranked #1 in South Carolina by nurse.org, which is voted on by students, which is a really great measure. But that program will start in the fall at BMH in the state-of-the-art simulation lab that, thanks to partnerships by the city of, with the city of Beaufort, Beaufort County, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and of course Beaufort Memorial, all of us came together to make this happen. It's the power of partnerships and collaborations. Our cybersecurity program has grown exponentially since its inception in 2021 and have added another state-of-the-art facility, and that one is down the street at 1100 Boundary, and that's our new cybersecurity lab. Again, community partners critical to that success. The South Coast Cyber Center, led by Warren Parker, who is here, that group has been actually absolutely critical to the success of our cybersecurity efforts, and also in pulling down 2 major federal grants, one with the Department of Defense and one with the NSF. Both of these are geared towards developing cybersecurity workforce and infrastructure in the region. The focus is now on maritime cybersecurity and securing an NSF grant worth up to $160 million over a 10-year span. And again, the South Coast Cyber Center, with all its partners, this is the city of Beaufort, the town of Port Royal, Beaufort County businesses, government agencies, the state of South Carolina, all those that are pulling together to help these things to happen and improving the quality of the program and our opportunity around grants. And then marine biology is the last program I'll talk about briefly, but that's another program experiencing absolutely exponential growth since we started it in 2020. It now has 116 students, so 6 our first year up to 116 in a short span of time. Now, we understand that Coastal Carolina University has 900 marine biology majors, so that gives us something to shoot for. We believe we have a better location. We're right on the water. We have our own research island. I believe that we have better faculty, and I'll get to introduce some of them in a moment. But again, all this comes about because of tons of partners, tons of partnerships, starting with the Rhodes family, which donated Pritchard's Island to the university, but also the Port Royal Sound Foundation, federal and regional funding agencies, the county, all these partners, all the municipalities, and so forth. All these things that make the Pritchard's Island Living Shores initiative happen, and that is yet in itself another team of dynamic and public and private partners. So again, we can't overstate how important our partnerships and our collaborations are to the success of the university, but more importantly to the success of those we serve, that is our students and our citizenry. So now I get to introduce our scientists who are part of the panel in the order in which they'll speak. So Dr. Mercer Brugler is Professor of Marine Biology and Department Chair of Natural Sciences, and he'll be followed by Dr. Ty Petty, who is Associate Professor of Biological Oceanography, and he's also the Director of the USCB Water Quality Lab. And then Dr. Kim Ritchie will speak last. She is Professor of Genetics and Prokaryotic Cell Biology, and she is the Director of our Pritchard's Island Initiative. So Dr. Brugler, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Skipper. Testing. Can you hear me okay? Everybody good? Awesome. I'm not one to sit down or sit behind a desk. And this is my new classroom here at USCB. We had roughly 60 students in introductory biology. So oh, thank you. Thank you, James. That's awesome. So it's being taught in this classroom, which is really cool. So I can invite students up here to teach their peers. So I just took over the reins of chair from Dr. Joe Staten, who's here in the audience, and I'm very thankful for your efforts because you and many others helped get the marine biology program off the ground, and I'm very thankful for that. So as Dr. Skipper said, in 2020, when the program started, we had 6 students. Now we're at 116, and we're about to explode even more. And the reason I say that is on Saturday during our fall open house, oh my gosh, the number of tour groups that were going through the Marine Science Building. At one point, the lobby was filled, both teaching labs were filled, and there was a line outside of the building of families and students waiting to come in and learn what we have to offer. That's amazing. So I'm very excited about this. And so you did mention that Coastal had 900. I looked at this in particular because here's why. Back in 2018, they had 930. Now they have 810. Guess who's stealing their students? We are, absolutely. And so when students are surveying marine biology schools along the South Carolina Bight, they're looking at Coastal, College of Charleston, us, they're going down to Eckerd College, and they're choosing us. And I think the reason is we pride ourselves on being outside in most of our labs. I mean, literally our playground is in our backyard. And so we're out in the field, getting that hands-on experience. And we're also, through our networks, we are placing students in PhD programs. So they're getting research in our lab over in the marine biology building in Bluffton campus, and they're getting on peer-reviewed publications, they're getting on book chapters, and so they're literally at the top of the pile when it comes to applying for a job or graduate school, and so they're jumping past that master's degree and going right into a PhD program, which is phenomenal, not only for them, but for us as well. Absolutely love that. We are, as of August, we've convened a committee in the Department of Natural Sciences to create a master's program. We're not sure what it's going to be called yet, but because we can't overlap with College of Charleston and some other places in terms of name, but it will be heavily marine focused. And the reason for that is in case a student doesn't get a job or into graduate school right away, we want to allow them a sort of a soft landing, able to continue on with their research, or if they just have want to do long-term research projects here in the Low Country, they'll have the ability to do that. So we're hoping to push that forward. What else? What am I missing? Come on, so much. I know, so much. I think, am I missing anything? No? Okay, all right. Well, I look forward to answering any questions you all have, but I'm very, very excited. We're literally busting at the seams over in that marine science building, and as this program grows, we're going to need to grow physically. So I'll leave it with that.
Sorry. Thank you, Mercer. My name is Ty Petty. I am an associate professor here at USCB and started here in 2019. They asked me to talk about water and water quality, which is what much of my research and lab and my work with students involves. But first, to touch a little bit on what Dr. Skipper was saying, retention and also what Mercer was saying here too, retention and giving these students experience. We've been very fortunate in the community we have here in Beaufort and at USCB. One of the things that attracted me to coming here was not that we had a marine biology program, but that we wanted to develop one. And the community has been hugely supportive of both the university, but also building this program for us. So, for example, this summer, the past summers, we've had numerous students working with us doing various research projects. This summer, we made it more official, and through community funding, we had 20 or 21 students working in our labs here on the Beaufort campus on a variety of projects, some on stormwater ponds, some on old rice impoundments, some out at Pritchard's Island. But this is all money, minus the Pritchard's Island funding, which is state funding. This is all money, so there's about 6 or 7 at Pritchard's. So the remaining 13 or 14 was all community funds that not only covered research costs, but paid these students $15 an hour, 20 to 30 hours a week, and so they could actually live in Beaufort and not go poor. They could live in Beaufort and eat. They could live in Beaufort and pay for the dorms. And so the community here has been a huge supporter of our program, and I hope that continues because it's been fantastic for us. As far as the water, if you haven't noticed, we have a few streams and creeks around Beaufort, and they're incredibly important to us. It's why most of us stay here, or people like us, Mercer and I, Kim's been here forever, come to Beaufort and then stay. What we do in my lab is work with students to monitor the estuarine and our tidal creeks' health. And so we do that to augment what the state can do. And so one of our big focuses is sampling more locations, so a larger geographic breadth and more frequently. The state does what they can do with the resources they have, but that's something like monthly samples around our estuary. Our students are out once a week sampling at both high and low tide to get a better idea of the health of our sound, the health of our tidal creeks, and potentially track any changes that are occurring. And along those lines, we have started partnering with the Port Royal Sound Foundation, which I see a couple of you out there, to do a citizens monitoring group to expand the breadth of our sampling. So even with an army of 900 students, if we ever get there, it's still hard to sample every part of the Port Royal Sound watershed. It's a huge, huge area. And when I say Port Royal Sound watershed, I also mean May River, Calabogie Sound too. But with citizens, we can get them out there sampling just like our students do. They can do some of the basic sampling and environmental monitoring in the field, and they bring us water samples back to the lab, and we can do some additional processing and additional analyses that you can't do in the field. And so we're excited. We're growing that now. We have a few new sites, particularly up in Pocataligo River, and then on Chessie Creek, Colleton River too, that we're expanding through the Citizens program. Am I forgetting anything now? Yeah, and one last thing I'll say about our summer students. It's not only fantastic research experience they get to go on and get the jobs or go on to graduate school like Dr. Brugler talked about, but it's huge in student retention. One thing that every school suffers with is student retention, and particularly from the spring semester to the fall semesters, students go home, and for whatever reason, they may not make it back. And so if you keep them here on campus, keep them engaged, create a community, it really helps with us keeping students here in the classroom and finally getting their degrees too. Cool. I will introduce Dr. Ritchie, since Mercer did not want to do that. Director of Pritchard's Island.
Thank you. Well, we have to thank the governor, the Rhodes family, Governor McMaster, and state delegates for the funding. And this funding has been instrumental in getting us out and up and running for research on Pritchard's Island. To that end, I would like to invite everybody on November 13th to attend an event that we are calling Return to Pritchard's Island. And we'll be giving an update on all of the research projects that we've got going. And just as a nutshell, some of the things we've been doing starting this year are thanks to Robert and Abby Morris, who've been stewards of Pritchard's Island and the Sea Turtle Monitoring Program. They are training us and all of our students, along with all of the other wonderful volunteers that have been stewards of Pritchard's, to take over the Sea Turtle Monitoring Program. So we've been doing this, and these opportunities for the students have been fantastic. They have loved every bit of it, and we've learned so much. We're also doing research projects on sea turtles. I'll update you on that. Various different projects. We're starting a shorebird study. We got an anonymous donation of an extra $100,000 to start that. We've had researchers from the University of Florida, researchers from graduate students from universities in the Netherlands come to do a dune study. They started in Florida. They wanted to use Pritchard's Island because it's a pristine barrier island to compare, and they're working their way up through New England now. So we'll have all that data to compare. We've got a herpetology study. These guys have many studies going on we'll update you about. We've got, what am I forgetting? Soundscape studies. So we've got underwater sound sensors that are measuring spawning aggregations, dolphin populations, different things like this. We've got bat studies. We just put up 3 different acoustic recorders to measure the bats that are coming through. A whole lot of projects going on, and it's been just fantastic for all of our students. This is an area that is understudied, what we're calling the Carolina Bight. The Port Royal Sound and surrounding areas have not been studied like other areas around South Carolina. So this is very important. We've got a ton of new incoming freshmen. I had no less than 15 mob me, thanks to Dr. Brugler, I think, about doing various projects on Pritchard's and other marine biology related projects. We each have students contacting us weekly about doing a master's program. And we are doing a faculty search right now, and I believe we had the most number of candidates apply than we've ever had, and most of those were drawn here by this opportunity for Pritchard's Island research. So, and we have one of our candidates in the audience with us listening. So I think that's it. Am I forgetting anything?
How do we get to the island?
Oh, how do you get there? It's really tricky. So we have a partnership with Fripp Resort. So now we have some kayaks out there. So we have a short little kayak ride out to Pritchard's Island, and that's been fun for all of us. We have a boat, so we can get there from Station Creek as well. So it's a little tricky to get there, but it's beautiful no matter how you get there. And we're working on other logistics so that we'll be able to spend the night on the island and do night patrols and do other types of research out there. We are interested in having artist retreats out there, not just science, but get artists and poets and photographers out there once we figure out logistics for staying an extended period of time. And don't forget, this island is perfect for comparative studies. So a lot of the studies we're doing are comparing what we're finding on Pritchard's, a barrier island that no one lives on, to Fripp, to Hilton Head, and others that are highly populated. So again, please, I hope I see everybody on November 13th, and that will be at the Tabby House, 5 to 6. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I'll say if my finance professors had an ounce of Dr. Brugler's enthusiasm, it would have been a lot more interesting 4 years of school. Well, thank you all again. We're going to turn our attention to the far table over there, and over there sits our elected city and county officials. And we're going to start with Neil Lipsitz. I'm going to introduce him, and he's going to say a couple comments. So, Neil is your city council county member, and his family is a native of Beaufort. He is a graduate of USC Coastal Carolina. Neil also represents city council on the Low Country Council of Government and on the Southern Low Country Regional Board. Neil's also a graduate of the Municipal Association of South Carolina's Advanced Municipal Elected Officials Institute. That takes 2 business cards. And served on the South Carolina Board of Nursing. Neil?
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for having me here. I want to thank the Education Foundation. One quick correction is I was on the SOLOCO, Southern Low Country. One of our other council members is now representing it, Josh Galati. But anyway, I want to thank you for having me here. I was on the State Board of Nursing for about 5.5 years. While I was on there, we could see that a shortage of nurses was coming. I mean, it was coming fast, and this was before the pandemic. Right at the pandemic, I left, and I made many great connections in Columbia on the Board of Nursing. So they gave me a lot of suggestions on things that we can do here in Beaufort to kind of avoid what some of the other areas are doing. We didn't totally avoid it, but the shortage was going to be severe, and it is still severe. Every time I saw Dr. Panu, you can't hide from me, Dr. Panu. Every time I saw him, I would tell him how we needed more nursing here at USC Beaufort. And I'd tell him again and again and again and again until he was sick of me. So anyway, I was just totally relentless. I also been Representative Shannon Erickson's ear, and that didn't take much. She got us some funding immediately to put towards it, what's at Beaufort Memorial right now. She was just unbelievable. So now there is a state-of-the-art facility at Beaufort Memorial, the PATH program. Let's see, and I need to thank the Beaufort Memorial Hospital, Beaufort County Council, our state legislators, especially Shannon Erickson, and also my fellow city council members for making this become a dream. More than 20 years ago, in the same room, the enthusiasm of this crowd was unbelievable when the question was how to make USCB a 4-year school. To me, it was even more emotional because I went to USC back in the 70s, and it was only a 2-year program. So I was forced to transfer somewhere else to finish to get my bachelor's degree. I didn't want to go to Columbia. It was just too big. That's how I ended up at Coastal Carolina. It was part of USC at the time. And no dorms, and we had to really suffer. We lived in hotel rooms on the beach. So, I mean, it was really suffering. So, just like I'm seeing the collaboration between USCB and others in healthcare, I believe it's now time to collaborate with USCB and other partners to make our waterways stay healthy. So I believe a way to do this is expand the USCB marine biology program. So the potential is here to make these among the best on the East Coast, even surpassing Coastal Carolinas. So Dr. Panu, Shannon Erickson, if you hear the tape, hear this on tape, get ready for a headache and an earache because I'm coming at you. So I plan to work with our state and federal partners. Hopefully we won't have to use any city funds. I want this to be a collaboration, though, of state and federal, with the city supporting it any way we can. Thank you.
Right. Well, I think we know his platform, and I think we all agree. So next we have Council Member Mitch Mitchell. He's also a native of Beaufort County, and is both retired U.S. Air Force Major General and a retired commercial airline pilot. He served on boards at the Penn Center and the Beaufort History Museum. Mitch is a graduate of South Carolina State University and the recipient of the Museum of Flight Pathfinder Awards, and a fellow at the South Carolina Riley Institute of Diversity and Leadership as well. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. As was mentioned, I am Mitch Mitchell, City Councilman. I feel especially fortunate to be a part of this panel. I feel even more especially blessed to be serving my home city of the city of Beaufort as a councilman. I also appreciate the fact that we have this university here. It was very important in my argument to convince my wife to come home. I said, you know, we have a university here just like we did at South Carolina State, and she said, oh, we really do? And that's what turned the key, sort of. Anyway, the city, and when I say city, I mean all of you, but also the folks that you have elected to be your representative, your council members, are very and have been very supportive of this university. While we bicker about some things, we are always unanimous when it comes to providing funds and supporting this university, because we realize the importance of it to both the viability and the vibrancy of our city. Toward that end, we purchased 1100 Boundary so that we could have a place for our cyber security center, with Warren Parker leading that effort. And then we turned around and appropriated some $500,000 to make the building functional. And along with that, we are in possession of $1.5 million, which I was consulting with our city manager, Scott Marshall, earlier today. And I don't understand all the magic of how this would work, but we got $1.5 million in earmarks that the building that we purchased so we could lease to the Warren and his folks for the cybersecurity program, and maybe that $1.5 million will hopefully allow them to buy the building. I guess the city gets its money back. Sounds pretty high finance to me, but I hope it all works out. Growing up here in Beaufort, I will tell you, my connection with the water was that I was the motor and Daddy was Daddy. Did the casting. Motor over here, son, motor over there. And I didn't have much appreciation for all of this while I was growing up, to be honest with you. But fortunately, for my travels around the world, I came to realize each time I came back to Beaufort that a lot of those things that I was looking for in all those far away places was right here in my little hometown, right in my backyard. So when I had the opportunity to come back home, I did. And now I am in awe of it all. It's just a beautiful place. And now that we have this marine biology program to study what's happening to this beautiful place and hopefully preserve it, I look forward to really being a part of supporting that. So thank you very much for listening to me. And I'm here to make sure that our waterways are protected, our environment is protected, and all that we love in Beaufort is protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. And now we're going to move on to our Beaufort County Council. We had Alice Howard on the schedule, but unfortunately, last minute she had a change and had to, I believe, go up to Columbia. So Dick was gracious enough to reach out to her and get her comments, and he's going to read them verbatim after my introduction with her. He promised no ad-libbing, and we all know that's a lie if you know Dick. So Alice has earned her master's degree in public administration from the University of Georgia. She has more than 30 years of experience as a community liaison working with environmental, natural resource, public administration, and regional planning issues. She retired from the Marine Corps Air Station in Beaufort, where she served as the Natural Resources and Environmental Director, and later served on the Community Plans and Liaison Officer. Dick, if you'd like to read them.
Thank you.
Mike.
As you all know, the weather events have caused schedules to get a little confused. As a result, Alice couldn't be here. She sends her regrets, and she says, I regret not being able to be with you this evening. I'm excited about the great work USCB is doing, including the work at Pritchard's Island. As USCB enters its next 20 years as a four-year university, we need more research, more programs, and more educational opportunities across Beaufort County. In Beaufort, the expansion of the marine sciences and marine biology programs, including the work at Pritchard's Island, are the beginning of what should become an important center for study. We need programs that highlight the uniqueness of this area. The USCB program should be at least as comprehensive as the programs at Coastal Carolina University. I look forward to helping in whatever way I can.
Oh, he didn't. All right, wonderful. And next we're going to move on to County Council Member York Glover. Mr. Glover graduated from St. Helena High School and earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from North Carolina A&T State University and a Master's of Arts degree from Clemson University. After 35 years of service, Mr. Glover retired from Clemson University Cooperative Extension Service. He has served on various boards and commissions in the community and across the state of South Carolina. Mr. Glover?
Okay, thank you. I really feel like and I'm a country boy, so I feel like the mule in the Kentucky Derby right now. But I'm just glad to be in the midst of all of these professors and great people. I'm the fifth generation of Glovers on St. Helena Island. And if you include in that Moses Glover, he was born in 1804, I believe, in Colleton County. That would make it sixth generation of Glovers in the Low Country that I know of. So I'm very proud of being a part of this community, born and raised here. And I was asked to talk about me. And there's probably no better person to do that but myself. So I'm going to just talk about me and my life here in Beaufort County and particularly on St. Helena Island. My wife and I experienced Pritchard Island 20-something years ago. And so we're going to look forward to returning to Pritchard Island. She had a chance to touch her first turtle sea turtle as it was leaving, going back to the ocean. And I don't think she rode the turtle, but she got a chance to touch it. Except for the time going to college, I've been on St. Helena. 10 plus. So I've been around for a while. I spent 2 months in New York working, and it told me that that was not for me. So I came back to Beaufort, where it's slow, and I love it. I can ride a tractor down the road. I get a curse every once in a while, but I can do that on St. Helena. St. Helena has been the best for me. It's a place where I grew up. When I went to college, I told people that I ate poor people's food, and they asked me, what is that? And I said, shrimp, crab, oysters. And they said they couldn't afford that. But on St. Helena, everybody had shrimp, crab, oysters, because it was there for them in the waterway. All you needed was a net, and if you couldn't buy one, you could always get somebody to make you one for a few dollars. So I work all my life here in Beaufort. I enjoy the opportunity. Beaufort afforded me to work at Clemson for 35 years. It also gave me an opportunity to become a school board member for 16 years, back in the 80s and part of the 90s. And from that experience, Clemson taught me the value of education and research. I could not make any, as a county agent, I could not make any recommendation unless it had at least 3 years research material behind it. I appreciate research even today. So when I look for information, I don't go to blog, I don't go to any other source. I put EDU behind any research information I do on Google, because I really want research-based information from an institution. Institution that would give us unbiased information. That's what we need. The other thing that helped me on the school board, when I was doing my master's degree at Clemson, I took an elective course, and I was on the school board, so I just took a class I thought was going to be easy. It was Communities in School. And that was one of the best classes I ever had, because it talked about education and communities. And what I learned from that was that the federal government will fund projects and programs, but they will never fund those projects and programs without research information. So that's why it takes a little longer for the federal government to start implementing programs, because they are not going to put money behind something unless it has research-based information. That's the power of research. And so I support any institution that's doing research, and I love what I heard from, I think it's Dr. Eric, who talked first, the professor, because he teaches in a way that I would have appreciated. Hands-on, out in the community. You know, one of the things that I loved about Clemson that it taught me was that if you're going to give out information, you got to first identify the problem. And two of the insects that I really love to identify was ants and spiders. And spiders in particular, because they are amazing. And if you start dissecting a spider, you will find out that first two brackets that you put them in is whether they got 6 eyes or 8 eyes. And then you go from there. I will always support anything that has research-based information behind it. And I look forward to my effort on County Council to support USCB here in Beaufort with their biology project. I was amazed by the article that Dr. Kim was in that the Post and Courier did about 3 or 4 months ago. And it showed her and her class. And I said to Mrs. Howard at the time, we should do something about that. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Glover, thank you very much. And I think with this forum being over dinner time, we can all really appreciate your poor food that you mentioned at the beginning of your comments. So thank you very much. Well, next we're going to move on to our state delegation. And as you can see, there's no extra table at the end of the stage. So this is going to be more of a video presentation from our 3 state delegates. We're going to start off, I'm going to introduce all 3 of them and read their bios, and then we're going to, 1, 2, 3, go through their messages that they provided for us this evening. So, Senator Tom Davis, he received his bachelor's degree from Furman University, and then he headed up north to the University of Maryland School of Law, where he received his law degree. Senator Davis has been an active supporting conservative, natural resources, and is assisting with the development of the Jasper County Port. He's also heavily involved in ethics legislation. Senator Davis has been an effective advocate for USCB to achieve funding parity with other colleges in the state of South Carolina. Next is Representative Shannon Erickson. Ms. Erickson is a graduate of USCB, fins up, right, Dr. Panu, fins up, and has worked to help achieve funding parity for USCB as well. You're going to notice the theme in all the state delegates about funding parity. Representative Erickson is a successful small business owner, as many of you know, and understands the importance of quality educational opportunities and a qualified workforce. And finally, to round out our state delegation is Representative Weston Newton. Representative Newton has a bachelor's degree from Washington and Lee University, and his law degree is from the University of South Carolina. Representative Newton has served civically in many capabilities, including chair of the Beaufort County Council. Representative Newton has also worked to achieve parity funding for USCB, so we really do appreciate our state delegates. And at this time, I think James Brown is going to go ahead and turn on some videos of those 3 delegates.
Well, we're here to celebrate the 20th anniversary of USCB becoming a 4-year institution, and actually the future looks even brighter. And in particular, I want to point to what USCB is doing in regard to Pritchard's Island and the research we're doing about this very fragile environmental estuarine system that we have. And USCB really stood up when it came to preserving Pritchard's Island. I mean, the property was granted to the state of South Carolina and then to USCB a while back by a family, but there was a provision in the deed that said that there had to be research activities that went on there. There had to be certain activities conducted, and those fell off over the years. But then USCB really stood up and took a leadership role in successfully getting a $500,000 recurring appropriation to US.
So to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the 4-year institution, USC Beaufort, is a landmark for our community. One of the most important pieces of the University of South Carolina Beaufort is its location. Sitting right on the salt marshes and the rivers and the estuary systems is critical for the growth of our university and the courses that they will be teaching in the future. The Spartina that grows in our estuary system right off the back of University of South Carolina Beaufort, their historic campus. That Spartina is the only grass in the world that can desalinate water. It takes the water that is out there, cleans it, uses it, puts it back into the system, and that grass grows and then dies. The growth of it gives animals a habitat to hide in and flourish. The dead grass actually goes into our wonderful pluff mud, enriching that soil and giving all of the tiniest microscopic things out in that estuary system the ability to live on the detritus that is there, that is like gold for them to eat and grow on. So how do we take that and the University of South Carolina Beaufort and combine them? We combine them with a world-class marine science program. We have Pritchard's Island, we have the estuary system, we have a Hilton Head campus and a Bluffton campus. We have all of the pieces. We're the fastest growing university in the state. Can't we just imagine what the world could hold if we can keep the water quality just as strong as it is right now? And we can do that. We can do that right here in Beaufort. We can grow the folks who want to learn about marine science. We can bring them from all over the world and teach them right here in our university. We can take our locals and teach them to help take care of our environment. So this is the job for the next century, is to take care of where we live and let USC Beaufort be the hub of everything in our environment. Thank you and so much for everybody who puts all of their effort into making this university great, the students, the professors, and the staff. I look forward to many more years of high quality higher education in the Beaufort system.
The importance of our waterways cannot be overstated in any way, shape, or form. Whether it's the Port Royal Sound Basin or any of the estuaries that we have. This is a special and unique part of South Carolina. Our estuarine system here is the nursery and hatchery, quite frankly, that supports a good portion of the sports fishing industry in the entire state of South Carolina. And whether it's the mix of salinity that impacts our waterways, you know, today there, which we find shrimp and oysters and crabs, if we're not careful with the runoff into our waterways, we might be talking about brim, bass, and alligators in the future. The marshes hold an unbelievable value, not only for our scenic vistas, but for our quality of life, which goes hand in hand with water quality here and understanding the importance of water quality. We don't need to look any further than Maryland to see what happens when a waterway and an ecosystem gets destroyed in the Chesapeake Bay, in the billions of dollars that they have spent trying to fix the problems that exist in that waterway. So being vigilant about our waterways is important. Understanding what's happening to our waterways, both in the present day and what our activities are going to cause an impact in the future, are essential for generations to come and protecting the quality of life in this part of South Carolina.
Perfect. Well, we definitely do have time for some question and answers. So hopefully you did spend a little bit of time listening to our speakers and thinking about a couple questions that you might want to ask them. So I'd love to open it up and ask questions. So if you just raise your hand and I'll call on you. There you go.
I've been told that's me. I mean, clearly urbanization and development is going to affect how water flows into the system. It's not percolating down through the ground and being filtered. It's running off fast, and it's also carrying any type of pollution that may be contained in that area. So going back to Chesapeake Bay example, much of that was agriculture too, but there are some large city centers in that area. They also changed water flow by damming rivers upstream. All of that together caused problems for that water system, that watershed. You know, luckily for the Port Royal Sound, we don't have major shipping. We haven't had the major industry that other ports have had, and it's really, you know, I think what the citizens did back in the 70s with the BASF plant really set the stage to keep this place the way it is. Had that gone through, I think this place would be a lot different than it is today. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. Next question.
You mentioned that you're trying to enhance the sampling programs with additional students. What parameters are you focusing on, and how do you intend to use that kind of information moving forward? And the second question is kind of unrelated. I want to know whether there's any collaboration with Nemours and the things that they're doing that would enhance the experience that our students will have here.
So I'll answer the Nemours question first because that's an easy one. So historically we've had students that have worked out at Nemours prior to me coming here. This summer we had one student working out there on a couple different projects. One are their old rice impoundments, and there's actually, I'm not a rice impoundment expert, but from what I know, there hasn't been a lot of work done on the biodiversity surrounding these systems, but it turns out they're very important for biodiversity, and they've become very important for migrating waterfowl and those sort of species. So part of our project, and we're still working on this, is, and Dr. Brugler can talk more about this, but eDNA, so taking water samples, filtering out a bunch of water, and then using genetics to identify what diversity exists in those ponds, in the idea of finding things that you can't see very easily or less abundant species. And then the other project is, for those that are familiar with Nemours, they've started they have cattle on their property now to help maintain the grasslands. And in an effort to, hopefully for them, they show that what the cattle are doing, which is what happens after they eat, and that hits the ground, it doesn't make it into the local waterways. So we're using genetics to monitor bacteria populations out there to look at water quality, and what they're hoping is to show that they're not having an impact on the local system. As far as what we measure from our sampling, some of it's very basic stuff, and a lot of these things are measured and were developed by the EPA and USGS and others like that as quick and easy measurements that could be indicative of a problem. They don't tell you necessarily what the problem is, but they tell you there's something going on in your waterway. And so some of it's basic, very basic things like temperature, salinity, so how salty the water is, dissolved oxygen, which is obviously important for animals and breathing or respiring. Dissolved oxygen, what else am I missing? pH, and then, so that's all done in the field. Then we bring water samples back, and again, measuring very basic things like total suspended solids, so how much stuff is floating around in the water column. Chlorophyll, which is a pigment that all plants possess, including single-celled plants that are food and are algae in the water column. You can measure how much algae you have in the water by measuring chlorophyll, and we're also saving samples to do more genetic kind of academic sort of questions. But all those parameters, if you see things going up or down, over time, you begin to think that something's going on here, we should look at it in more detail. And one thing I forgot to mention too, in addition to our students going out, we are now slowly deploying sensors, continuous monitoring platforms around the Port Royal Sound watershed. So through a grant from the Community Foundation of Low Country and partnership with the Port Royal Sound Foundation, we have a continuous monitoring station on the Chechessie at their dock. And I know I'm not supposed to say Coastal Carolina, but through a collaboration with their scientists at Coastal Carolina, we're working on putting a continuous monitoring station on the pier at the Broad River, and potentially one at Harbor River over by Hunting Island. And we've also discussed putting one out in either Trenchard's Inlet or Skull Creek associated with Pritchard's Island too. Yep.
Mr. Rice, can I make a comment?
Sure.
To the first question that was asked earlier about the pollution and the mention of the agriculture. And a lot of times people, when you mention agriculture, they think of farmers, but not agricultural products, or pesticide, et cetera, et cetera. Most of our farmers, particularly our large farmers, have moved toward what is called precision agriculture. So they are very precise in how they apply fertilizer and pesticide, and it saved them a whole lot of money. As an extension agent, when we recommend to a homeowner the use of pesticide, and we say 1 ounce will do the job for you, we find them using a pound. And that ends up a lot of time in our waterway, overuse of pesticide by homeowners more so than agriculture. So I would just want to defend our farmers at this time. That's all. Thank you.
Now, and thank you for saying that. I wasn't throwing shade at any agriculture around here. And actually Chesapeake Bay is a good example of what we did wrong in the past, but through years of education and outreach, they have, taught the agriculture sector that exactly what you were saying, that a little bit is good, a lot is not better. And there are many studies out there now showing that home, individual, garden, and lawn use is a much greater threat to local waterways for pesticides and nutrients than agriculture is. Yeah. So.
Thank you. I think Dick had something to add as well before we move on.
Brett, I certainly agree with that. I'd like to speak for just a minute about the opportunity to deal with that. Thank you. The threat is, as you described it, runoff is certainly an issue. The May River, as I understand it from Dr. Petty's test, is less salty than it used to be because of the amount of fresh water arriving in it. And our waterways around here are not like waterways with large rivers entering into them. We're very salty. That's why we have large sea creatures miles inland. That's why we have 53% of the salt marsh that's in the state of South Carolina is in Beaufort County. South Carolina has more salt marsh than any other place on the East Coast. That means that of those acres, they each sequester a ton of carbon each year. That's 400 million pounds of carbon each year that will be sequestered in our salt marsh. And if you take the salt out of the salt water, then not only do you get the alligators and the brim you heard about earlier, you don't have the salt marsh there. So how do we deal with that? We have on your property tax bills a stormwater fee. That stormwater fee was put in place several years ago as they were going around the country. It's not unique. And what we've been doing with that is what we were tasked to do, which is to take the water off of the land where the water was causing problems, whether it be a flooded street, a flooded home, or something else. But where that water goes matters. And what we've been doing is building bigger ditches to put that water into the salt waterways faster. That's a bit of a problem. Let me give you an example. If you take a really large parking lot, you put it in one of these hot summer days, you let cars drive around on it, you've got oil, you've got a number of things in it, and then you drop a rain shower on there like we get in the afternoons, and that water will be approaching 80 to 100 degrees when it arrives in the salt marsh, and it'll be full of pollutants, whether it be petroleum or other things. Instead of doing that, why don't we create a larger basin, something that I'll call a regional lake, maybe only 8 or 10 acres, but allow that water to normalize its temperature, allow the sediments to drop to the bottom, and allow those pollutants to be managed before we put it into our salt waterways. We can take those same stormwater fees and begin doing that. But how big should it be? What depth should it be? What circulation is required? We don't know because nobody studied it, because the other people don't have this salt water that we have here. They have fresh water coming in there. That's why we have so many acres of salt marsh here. Somebody needs to study that, and these folks over here are those somebody, and their compadres are as well. In addition to that, my company owns some stormwater ponds, just like you have on golf courses and military installations and hospitals throughout the county. Those ponds are something to look at that you'd like to be attractive. What typically happens is a copper-based compound is put in there to manage the growth of weeds and algae. That looks okay, but when you have the kind of rain that came through here recently, those waters get flushed into the marsh, and that copper goes with them. And my friend Dr. Chris Morris used to tell me that in concentrations of billions of parts, just minimal billions of parts per gallon, those will kill larval shrimp, crab, and oysters in our salt marsh. I'm not suggesting we should do something radically different with those ponds, but if we could keep them a foot or two lower so they could absorb water and let them settle before it goes into the marsh, and if we could find a substitute that didn't kill those larval things in the marsh, that would be a very good thing for the salt creatures that live here and not in this abundance anywhere else. In order to do that, we probably need a research capacity, and a study capacity is going to come up with a solution so that we can then deploy them. So instead of sitting here and saying this is a bad thing, we need to stop certain things from happening, which is not always a successful strategy. Thank you. Let's instead have a call to action to implement. She didn't often ask me to speak up. Thank you, Sharon. And thank you for the 49 years we celebrated last week, by the way. And I'm still learning. And so call to action says if we know what's required, then we know what we can do to fix it. And for what we're testing today and what we're monitoring, which was Andy's question, which was a great one, what should we be monitoring, and how do we go about doing that? How do we go about reporting that? If we don't know what's out there and we don't know how to monitor it, and we aren't reporting it here, The signs that we're going to get to tell us that we should have been doing that are not going to be good signs. We can be ahead of the curve. Now, we have the salt marsh here that protects us from storms, waves, erosion, and lots of things that are worthwhile. There are people around the world today trying to figure out how to protect themselves from those same things. By having an innovation center and teaching and learning about this in a place where they have that high salinity, we have a high temperature that gives us a long growing season. We have clean water, so salt marsh can grow in that clean, high salinity water. And we have high tidal amplitudes, so we can cover hundreds of thousands of acres a day. My friend Jody Hayward back there has on her website that we have 1.2 million gallons of water per minute moving through the Port Royal Sound when the tide is flowing. Those people ought to come here and learn how to do it. And we ought to be able to tell them and teach them, because we've got the best program here to study this. And this is not a program that's going to be funded by somebody else somewhere. This is our backyard, this is our home, and we're going to have to take care of it. We're going to have to provide the resources to do it. The great thing is good minds and educators like these people and the students that are subscribing want to come here. And the question I put is this important to Beaufort? Do we want to have it here? Thank you.
Thank you, Dick, for the comments. Question?
Get to 900 students or even 750 students easier for a program. I think we have to start looking at things outside the ancillary services, outside the curriculum, such as how do you plan on increasing retention and graduation rates, which frankly, you know, needs to go much higher to attract the best and brightest students here in South Carolina. Do you have any idea of the cost associated with trying to sustain an undergraduate program? Not even talking about a graduate program. How many faculty would be required? And would the classroom, the services and instruction delivered here on this campus or on the Beaufort campus? I know that's a lot of questions, but you just, I think the provost and the chair can probably answer those questions.
Definitely the provost.
Sure, I'll jump right in. So one of the things that we're always looking to do is how do we add more faculty? We've been sort of in a flat growth pattern for a while, and now we're starting to tip forward in terms of growth. We have celebrated this year 2,200 students, 2,203 to be precise. So we're very excited. It's the highest enrollment, also our highest freshman enrollment as well this year. One of the things that we're able to do with growth is hire more faculty. And that's one of the things that, you know, the university is made and built out of many different programs, many different academic disciplines, many different departments. And some of them, if you're sitting at a flat growth pattern for the institution, that means that inside of that, some programs are growing, some are expanding, some are contracting, and so you watch that. With basically the same number of faculty, you move faculty around. One of the things we've been able to do with partners is on occasion we're able to have seed funding for a faculty member that enables us to go ahead and hire that faculty member, and based on growth projections, then be able to take on the cost of paying that faculty member as part of the university faculty. But still, our number of faculty has remained pretty flat for most of the time since I've been here, which is 8 years, around 95 to 100 faculty given the year. But with, again, to go back to reference my remarks that I made, everything that we're able to do that has been successful at the university in terms of growing programs and growing initiatives and growing projects and being able to serve the community and improve outcomes of the community has been done hand in hand with the community. So we're increasingly not an institution that is in a silo, not an institution that has walls around it, but continually our faculty are really good at turning their gaze outward of the university. How do we serve? How do we build all that goodwill, all that energy, all that interface with the community comes back to the university in spades. And so that's one of the things that we talk about a lot. And go ahead.
I'd like to add on that from the history component plus the future piece. 23 or 4 years ago, we had a forum in this room. About 350 people were here, and the enthusiasm for having a four-year university was very high. Most people at that time thought that this was going to happen because somebody somewhere else was going to say that it should happen and give it to us. There's no history to indicate that was ever going to work, and there's plenty of history to indicate that there was an active force resisting that. Now here we are 20 years later. So the question I would pose, your question is certainly valid, but let me put it into a slightly different context. If we don't develop the capacity to manage, monitor, and understand what's happening in this environment around us, and put in place the educational research and implementation tools to see that that environment stays at the quality that it's at now, what will that cost be? And if we think this is going to be funded by the University out of Columbia, your experience is different than mine. This is going to have to be funded by the support of our elected leaders at the state, and you heard what they have to say, our elected leadership at the county and the cities, and it's going to have to be funded by this community. But to answer your question, as I look at it here today, is no better example than Colonel Parker's efforts over here with the Cyber Center. There's a $1 million National Science Foundation grant there that calls for planning is being worked with USCB, which will make USCB a center of excellence as determined by Homeland Security and the National Security Agency. And if that is successful, that will produce about $100 to $60 million over 10 years to grow that program here, focusing on maritime cybersecurity. There is a similar program available in the National Estuary Program. It's going to take some politics. We're perfectly capable of doing that as a community. If that is available, that'll produce about $1 million in income, and the other National Estuary Programs have been producing about 18 to 19 million a year in grants from other parties. That is best operated through a university. That is not something that's going to happen in a silo. That will require all of us. The reason that I am happy to be here, and thank you all for being here, is the question is, does Beaufort want to see this sort of program in Beaufort? And if so, is this a process we should spend our time operating and energizing, just like we're working as the Education Foundation on the Convocation Center and the athletic fields and the other programs in Bluffton and the housing in Hilton Head. If you want it here on that waterway right there, this is the opportunity for us to hear from you, because I think the money is there if the will is to say that's what we want to do. And I can say that having been part of that first round when we went and raised $25 million for USCB's first campuses on the south side, and we went to Columbia and Florence and Greenville. We didn't have to go to Charleston because they were in Columbia the same day we were there. And they all said, we love the fact that the local community is supporting this. Boom, you're a 4-year degree granting institution. That happened in about 6 months. So the opportunity for this is huge. There will be cost, and those costs are going to largely be what I would describe as investments as opposed to sunken costs. The difference is if we don't, I fear the Chesapeake Bay problem, where that is a sunken cost with no end in sight.
That's a great response. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Margot Ellis, and in 2008 I left Beaufort because I thought I had to in order to get a well-paying job. My question is related to why are we not investing in hardcore coding technologies, which could translate also into cybersecurity, but why are we focusing on cybersecurity when we don't have a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem to support the cybersecurity investment? And my
That's a great question. And the reality of it is we have a computational science program, and within that program we have information science and technology, and within that we have the cybersecurity program. And the reality of it is we have a lot of students that leave the area. They go to Atlanta, work in fintech. They go to Charlotte, which is the second largest nerve center after New York in terms of financial. And so these are realities within the university. And so part of what we've done in terms of cybersecurity is go after a couple of big grants. One of them is the Department of Defense to help transitioning military, move out of the military and into the workforce, hopefully stay in the region. But you're right, we have to have jobs. And so the nature of the NSF grant that we have is entirely built on how do we build an ecosystem around cybersecurity and how do we base it here in the Low Country. You're right, once students graduate and they don't have that type of job here in the region, they're going to go elsewhere. That's just the reality of it. It's part of our role as a regional institution. We graduate students, namely in fields like nursing and hospitality management and others that stick around. And we graduate students also that go off to other places. So as we build a tech infrastructure and build a cybersecurity infrastructure, which is part of this grant, we received $1 million from NSF, and so the next stage is $160 million over 10 years. But the entire purpose of that is building an ecosystem. This goes private, public, all the agencies that you can think of, all the partners within our region, partners outside the region. And so you have built into that, you have also the research infrastructure. So partners, so you have USCB is up here as the lead institution, but our partners consist of Clemson University, University of South Carolina and Columbia, the Citadel, South Carolina State, our local technical college, as well as South Carolina Competes, SCRA, and all the other agencies that you would think of. So it is comprehensive, it's robust. The robustness of it and the nature of the multitude of partners we have is what gave us such great strength to get the $1 million to get this off the ground. And now, so part of this planning stage is to see, okay, how do we increase that? How do we build a proposal that is going to make the Low Country the hub of something that can elevate the types of jobs that people have, the type of ecosystem that's not just dependent on, for instance, hospitality. Anybody else want to add to that?
I'd like to just comment. I appreciate the comment coming from the young lady. And I'm hoping that you can stay and help improve and build on your ideas. It kind of reminds me of our investment in nurses. We can see the end result, and those nurses stay here. So I think your comment is well taken, and I think you need to expand that and look at the economic board to see how you can build on your idea so that we can build a better community in Beaufort. I thank you for your comment.
I just thought I'd weigh in too. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I left here after high school, went to college, and spent most of my life in Atlanta with a couple years in San Francisco. Atlanta became a tech hub because it had Georgia Tech, Southern Tech, and a couple of other folks, including some large employers. Your question about investing, particularly in hardcore coding, is an interesting question. I'd like to talk to you about that, what you see coming with AI, what you see changing. Creating an entrepreneurial environment here is a different situation. That's a choice of whether you invest in hardcore coding or cyber or what you choose. Here's my analysis and why I support this. There were 1.1 million jobs in cyber that were open last year. That number varies depending on who you ask and what their agenda and their measurement might be, but that's the number as a prospective employer or investor that I look at. The cyber risk is continuing to grow. It is an existential risk. It is similar to a national security risk, which this community has been particularly generous to and benefiting from our relationship with the military. I'm very familiar with the situation in Georgia. I've been there a couple of times. The governor over there did a great job putting that in place, but it wasn't some idle thing. It happened because of a particular experience he went through. So I'm happy to talk with you about entrepreneurship. I'm happy about creating a situation where we can see things thrive. I think there's a great deal of that. Sitting in this room are a couple of people that I know very well and have worked with who have very great brains and are entrepreneurial in their own right. But you don't come in somewhere and just sort of plant the vineyard and hope that the folks are going to be there to gather the grapes and make the wine. There's a process that has to happen here. And if you look at Athens, Georgia, or if you look at Clemson, South Carolina, they are what they are because those universities were located there. The University of Georgia was proposed to go into Eatonton, Georgia, which is famous for Uncle Remus and has Brer Rabbit statue on the main town. They chose not to have it there because the leaders of the community at that time said they didn't want all those college kids. Athens has turned out to do pretty well economically and culturally as a result. So I'd be happy to talk with you offline, but I think the creation of a high-quality educational facility is fundamental to entrepreneurship and growth.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Which is just simply to say, once upon a time, let me take a step back further, which is to say that I come from very old white money and black slaves, right? That's the intersection I was born at. My grandfather owned a factory that was the lifeblood of a small Pennsylvania town called Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, just outside of Gettysburg. My family originally came here in the 1700s on the white side to fight in the Revolutionary War. I share that to say that Waynesboro, Pennsylvania is now a meth town because there wasn't enough awareness of how market economics work, right? And I say that to say, having worked for Secretary Shinseki, who used to be the head of the Department of Veterans Affairs as his legislative aide to the Senate for appropriations, I understand how centers of excellence are created, and you don't create a center of excellence down the street from another center of excellence. We can't geographically make sense to the federal government as the center of excellence for cybersecurity when there's another one just down the street. It just doesn't work that way in Washington, D.C., which is where a lot of these decisions are made. There's a level on which, because of our proximity and the competition, we can kind of elbow our way into a position to stand stronger for longer, but our fundamentals aren't there, right? My whole point is 100 years ago in the 1920s, Maria Montessori said, why are we doing education like we did 100 years ago? We don't do medicine like that. And if it hadn't been for Helen Keller being born to a wealthy family who would invest in teaching her beyond the fact of being deaf and blind, then she wouldn't have been able to unlock the knowledge in her brain. So my point here is that if we're not teaching hardcore coding from early ages the way that they do in Silicon Valley, we are essentially creating students who are illiterate in today's tech economy. And I think of cyber as something like a specialization within the literacy of technology, and we have to have the fundamentals or you can't specialize. So forgive me for the pushback.
Well, let me just respond to that by saying I hope you agree that the unique qualities of the Port Royal Sound, the Calabogie Sound, and the 8 other rivers that comprise the Carolina Bight, which is high salinity, high tidal flow, high temperatures for grossing, those are unique assets here, and if you're going to create a center of excellence around that, this is the opportunity to do this. This is the place, and there's no other place like it to do that. So while I'm going to change the subject, I'm agreeing with your concept of uniqueness, and I'm still happy to talk to you individually about that. Thank you.
Ma'am, I think you have some great comments and you have a lot to provide. And I do challenge you. I was, not on the same topic, but 4.5 years ago, I was in the same situation where I didn't think the university was doing enough to be involved in the community. And now I'm here 4.5 years, chairing the foundation. So I do challenge you to come up, build some partnerships with the university and provide your expertise. So wonderful. Thank you. Great comments. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Going once. Oh, there we go. I thought I saw one more.
Are y'all partnering with local municipalities, or I know they have their monitoring, monthly monitoring, the DOD, TSS, and all that. But are y'all partnering with them to see what kind of data that they may have to alert y'all to problems in the environment?
So through the water quality lab that we have at USCB, we run stormwater samples for the town of Bluffton and Beaufort County, which includes City of Beaufort, Port Royal. As far as like individual communities, that tends to be individual communities reaching out to us or some other entity that's also doing similar sampling to get that information. So the short answer is no. We are working, however, again, with Port Royal Sound Foundation, and this is not so much community data, but watershed data, and synthesizing historical state data, but also historical town. We're getting data from Bluffton, Hilton Head County to synthesize all that and better understand what the watershed is like, how it functions. As silly as that sounds, every watershed is unique and different, and ours is no different. And we have, I can count on my hand the number of papers that actually talk about Port Royal Sound watershed and the environmental conditions and what's normal and what's abnormal. So we're working towards that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Now, that's not an individual community side of things. And kind of going along with what you're asking, I think, and something that Dick had said before, with these stormwater ponds, there is more that can be done. They are, and this is not pointing fingers or anything, but people, one of the main pesticides used to kill back algal blooms specifically is our copper-based products. In general, they're made to settle out or bind and not stick around long, but those ponds do empty out into the estuary, and I think there is a big question on what is the legacy of that copper in the system. It's meant to kill algae, but it does kill other small invertebrates. That's why we have copper-based paints on the bottom of our boats, is so things don't foul and grow on them. And so there's more work to be done there. So, go back to your question. We're getting there. We're not there yet, but we're working towards that. Yeah.
Wonderful. We have time for one last final question, and then I'm going to close this out. Yeah, Neil.
I got a controversial one. Probably
Okay,
the most controversial one of the evening. 20 plus years ago, we decided, the question was made, what would it take to make this a 4-year university? I would like to question what would it take to make this the University of Beaufort? Told you it was controversial.
Well, if you could only be in some of our meetings, but we're not going to answer that one. But I would like to kind of close this down, and there's 4 points that I want to make. First of all, thank you so much for our panel, and thank you so much for our audience and our questions. We really do appreciate it. This really is how we change the direction of USCB. We've hosted similar type items, not to this caliber, in Bluffton, or at least gotten input from the local communities in Hilton Head and Bluffton. And I am a very selfish individual, and the reason why I'm on this board as well is because I have 3 little girls, and I want them to know about USCB. I want them to stay here as long as they possibly can. And I do passionately feel that this is going to be a completely different university in the next 5 years. Just seeing the things that I see, talking in the circles that I'm talking in at the school, it really is. It is at the very beginning stages of a very young university. So the next thing I would like to say is don't forget about Dr. Ritchie's returning to Pritchard's Island event, November 13th. And where is that at again? The Tabby Place. The Tabby Place. And then also don't forget about your surveys. If you don't have one, grab it on the table, fill it out. You can either leave it there, or you can, I don't know if I saw a pin there, but if you see me, I'll give you mine. Or you can email it into the address that's on the top of that survey. And then finally, I want to say one thing, and Dick and I were kind of talking about themes for the evening. When I moved down here actually in 01 after 9/11, I was stationed down at Hunter, and I met a girl who was from Bluffton, and I realized I was never going to leave, even if I wanted to. So I've been down here for going on around 22 years, and it has obviously changed a lot. But when I would meet with people, I'm in the finance industry, and I work all over the county. And when I meet with people on Hilton Head, they really had no need for anybody in Bluffton. They don't come off the bridge. The bridge was going to fall down if they ever crossed. Didn't have any need for anybody in Bluffton. That has drastically changed. We see a lot of businesses coming across Bluffton. And in Bluffton, it was almost the same thing for Beaufort. We don't really need to go north to Beaufort. We have everything. We have Target. We don't need to go to Beaufort. And then Beaufort, it was the folks, they really didn't need people on Hilton Head. Well, that has changed. And I really want everybody to think about this, and I can't take credit for it. Dick thought this up, is the waterways should not divide us. They should unite us. So that is kind of the theme for the evening in my mind, is that the waterways that we have is a very special thing, and we need to make sure it unites the entire county and Jasper County. So with that being said, everyone, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to another one here soon. Thank you.